extreme power requirements or anything else. And he's had scientists come from other countries and say, you know, I've got a multi-million-dollar installation that can't do what your little thing does here in this gas engine. And so it's a remarkable thing, but explaining it in regular terms has been very difficult. And he's in the process of writing a book that crosses that divide. And he hopes that that'll help sell his stuff, but I know it won't, because that's not the issue. Having it work, obviously, is not the issue.
No.
How it works has never been a problem with other things, right? Because electricity that you buy is made through a technology that nobody really understands, because there's no reason for you to pay for anything, because it comes with the simple division of this into two components and allowing it to express the new part. So electricity can easily be doubled. And if you do it right, because if you use a material that actually is magnetically inducible, like every core in every transformer, and you can read about this, it will increase the magnetic field by over 1,000 times.
Wow.
Okay? Now that increase in magnetic field can be leveraged to an increase in power or current, okay, and combine the two easily. And a guy named Thane C. Hines, Canadian inventor who got obsessed by this and lost his marriage in the process. No surprise, spent more time in his garage than at home. Developed and applied for a patent called a bitoroidal topological transformer, a BTTT. That's what he calls it. In the movies, they call it no, too early for the flux capacitor, sorry. That's next. He also did that. But essentially what it is it's a transformer that takes that magnetic pulse that every transformer makes when you put power into it and taps off of that, which creates a back magnetic pulse that combines with the original one and makes the work that you pay for, and moves that magnetic pulse into another coil rather than the original one, so it doesn't make any work for the generator. And his original patent demonstrated he could do 400% or 4 times the power out than in, which is why you won't get a patent. It's because there's no matter consumed in that reaction. Okay, the U.S. Patent Office will not give a patent to anything that doesn't consume matter in an inefficient way. If you show that you produce more energy than you put in, they refuse to give you a patent. They call it over-unity, and that's not possible. So it's a fraud, regardless of the fact that it can be verified and explained with modern science. They won't do it.
Well, isn't part of the whole problem here is because our economy is based on all of these things and the power that be. Because I have a friend who's had various friends that have had breakthroughs and things, and they have either been killed or ostracized or whatever. And even Bruinsky, when we saw Bruinsky's about the things he's done with cancer stuff, and he's in Texas, they've been trying for years to everything to take his license and do whatever. So you have to be careful too, because if you're too visible.
Well, since I've talked to Paul probably 4 or 5 times, I'm probably on the list. Because he is on the list.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise us.
He's not living, by the way, he's not living in a compound in Kentucky with a lot of ex-revenuers. It's armed. Guys carry machine
I mean,
guns.
this is real stuff. We could have had this
So he's
years ago.
He's in jail, like?
No, well, he's in a self-exiled state, but he's also free to try to conduct business. He claims he's trying to work with foreign governments, but Philippines is an example. You know, that's the CIA will take care of those.
And Royal Rife, the same thing happened to him. And a doctor used that machine
see those
with the cancer things, and the guy went to give to the news, and he was poisoned.
Now that whole Rife incident, Tom's got a Rife machine, which I first experienced. I've never seen one before. It's really cool. But those machines are all based on ether science, so they don't conform to the medical definition of what science is, so they can never be approved because they're not scientific, right? They're not, you know, in that thing. And they do things that are impossible in regular physical science, so there you go. It's impossible for it to work, even though it's doing it. Now, Tesla, so capacitors...
I need to limit to 10 minutes.
10 minutes, real quick. I want to do the technology a little bit more, okay, just so you have a handle on it. Okay, capacitors, we talked about the other side of that, the other thing that works, the other component of electricity is called an inductor, right? It's a coil of wires, usually has a magnetic core or magnetizable core in the middle of it that amplifies the power of the magnetic field by 1,000 times, right? So it makes sense to put those in there, right? So that's how electricity is generated. A magnet sweeps by, a core with a coil around it induces a magnetic field that's converted into electricity, and there you go. You've got electricity, okay? Physical science ignores when that happens, okay? Field science says, well, it happens in the field interchange, so it's a speed of light kind of thing. But it's automatic if the power is sent out those wires. What it does automatically is it generates a reverse magnetic field which pushes against that incoming magnet and makes you do work to turn it. Okay? You have to turn it to generate it. The moving fields make the power. Okay? So it has to move. So that's what you pay for, is pushing the reverse force. Okay? Thane has a second application called, he calls it a Regen X coil. Okay? It could be a flux capacitor. I mean, it could be a cane drive, a capacitor inductor, but it could be a Tesla coil because that's the coil that Tesla worked with, were these coils that had integrated capacitor and inductors together. Now, regular electronics would never do this because you need a good inductor to do inducting things, and you need a good capacitor to do capacitive things, and you never want to mix them. Especially since you can't explain how a capacitor works anyway, so how could you? And so you can buy inductors, you can buy capacitors, you can't buy capacitive inductors or Regen X coils or Tesla coils. You can only make them yourself. So he made one, and guess what? It doesn't push back. It in fact pushes the magnet. So now, not only does it generate electricity, it also powers the motor. So he applied for a patent, and he bench tested an electric car. He built an electric car on a tabletop, right? Motor. Monitored the power that it took to run it, the power that you get when you put on the brakes, because they do regenerate the power when you brake them, right? So that you can use less battery power, get further mileage. And guess what? He charges a battery when he's accelerating down the road.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my God.
So guess who never has to plug their car in?
Exactly.
Thane C. Hines.
Wow.
Nice.
How does all this electromagnetic power affect the body?
Yeah, that's what I want.
It turns out dielectric fields are very good for it, magnetic fields are bad for it. So you can send power remotely through magnetic fields. You could put a huge magnetic field around this building. You could have coils all over it. They'll pick up the power. You can power everything in the building, but you'll also kill yourself or drive yourself crazy because it'll spoil your brain. So how you do it becomes important.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard of people magnetizing water before drinking it.
See, it's kind of a misnomer. What they're doing is they're dielectrically charging the water, and then it's because water's diamagnetic. It is repelled by magnets, okay, which again can't be explained by physical science. Okay, how can something always resist a magnet, whether it's north or south? It still gets pushed away. Water's one of those things, because the dielectric charge is more than spatial. It's not planar. It's multi-planar. So no matter what the orientation is, it tries to force itself to align, and it can't, so it gets pushed away. By putting more dielectricity into it, making it linear, it becomes even more so. To itself, it may still be attracted. In fact, it's been demonstrated that it does form chains and rings. So that makes it denser than oxygen and nitrogen, even though it's heavier, right? Or it's lighter, but it's denser than those gases. So this gas, this energizable gas, liquefies at minus 178 C. It's pure water. Okay. Water, as it is, has 13 solid states. This obviously would form at least a 14th one, if not more. And if you burn it, and it will ignite if you compress it above 6 atmospheres, use a spark or a flame or a glow, that will ignite it. And it will burn at 54 degrees C, so it won't even boil water unless you mix it with something else. And then it will burn through carbon, which is a 2700 degrees C temperature. It burns through carbon. It also will simultaneously melt two metals next to each other that have completely different melting temperatures, like titanium, which is above 1,000 degrees, and silver, which is way down there on that low end, as you know. So it's an amazing reaction because it's a nuclear reaction. It's not a typical thermal reaction, okay? And the exhaust is just water because it's not a burn, it's a condensation. It also produces electricity. If you put this into a fuel cell, it gives you 3 times the power out that you get from putting hydrogen and oxygen in a fuel cell. Okay, so it will turn directly into electricity, very efficient. And so it is one clean answer, but completely unnecessary because you can have an electric motor generator that doesn't use anything, not even water, as a medium. And any outlet you have, you could plug one of these little bi-toroidal transformers, topological transformers into the wall, and then take all the power you need to run your whole house and not be billed for it because it won't take any power from the power company.
That's why JP Morgan did not.
This is why Tesla got hammered. It's because Tesla was, with his capacitive inductors, Tesla was separating that and finding that he could get electricity to travel not at light speed, but at pi over 2, which is a little greater than light speeds.
Yeah.
And that power didn't travel as a transverse wave, like this. It went longitudinally. So essentially, and it travels through the ether, so it's like if you had a rod and you pushed on the rod, you'd feel it immediately on the other end. That's what was happening with the energy that Tesla was sending.
And he went to JP Morgan and said, I've got this great thing, and he explained it, he says, it won't cost anybody anything. And JP Morgan said,
Forget that. Yeah, that's not the industrial way.
And he died with no money.
Well, it was interesting because the people that got rich off of him actually supported him. They paid his hotel bills, his food bills, and gave him a small lab, but they refused to support his actual work and promote it or anything else. And he did die before he was able to explain some of the things. He did create a death ray and also healing rays. But all of that was, confiscated by the government because he had actually set up an appointment to meet with the government and give them the death ray because World War I was raging and no end in sight. And he wanted to give us an ultimate defense weapon. You build a death ray installation, anything that comes at you, you can vaporize. So the ultimate defense weapon. He didn't really consider that you could put it on a tank and be offensive with it. But that meeting never happened because he died before he took place.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, it seems like you brought several things up, big picture, that could change our lives
Absolutely.
for the good. And we're at a roadblock, and yet we're in Silicon Valley with all these inventions that are coming out that are putting other businesses out of business, the internet, one thing after
The
the other.
internet is a huge transition, but
coming up. So it's like, what will be the transition
Well, let me
get through this?
real quickly, I want to mention the internet because I actually lived with a woman, Robin Landers, maybe you guys know her, who worked for the phone company. And she worked with the executives that recognized that they were putting themselves out of business by building the internet. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
They knew they were doing that, but they also knew it was better for the country. So, they said, who cares about the corporation? Let's take care of the people.
I love it.
And they were committed on the inside. So that's why that happened. But also it happened because I worked on the other side of that with Nortel, who had most of the long haul business, and the internet technology increased their efficiency so much that they couldn't say no to it. So the internet actually started in the phone company as an internal backbone thing.
My understanding it started with the military.
Usually
The first internet was actually something that the military did, but in terms of bringing it to the people, it transitioned through the phone company itself, using it in the backbone. And then, a company like Cisco came along and said, hey, we can do that downstream too.
Right.
And they took off, and the phone company fought it for years. I mean, because their infrastructure was not
ready for that.
not easily converted. It was very expensive and abandoning a lot of infrastructure to do that. So they resisted and fell behind as a result. That's why Cisco's as big as it is. And then while we came along, the Chinese company, and cut the prices like crazy, and they're now the dominant factor. But that's industrial competition, right? You essentially bury your competition by underselling them below cost.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you have enough investments, then U.S. did.
And lots of slave labor.
U.S. did. Well, when you have to pay for energy, you can't compete with slave labor. But if energy is free, we could be an industrialized nation again because there would be no cost of manufacturing other than materials, and that's an important deal. And the transportation of those materials doesn't matter because that's free.
So why is this on TED Talks?
So here's the deal.
To make the change.
Here's the deal. I believe the only way this is going to happen if it goes the way of marijuana.
Okay.
It's going to have to be an
Grassroots.
underground,
Grassroots.
bottom-up,
That's how it is.
grassroots, black market,
And gay marriage, same thing.
gay marriage, black market event because the man will never support this.
Right,
They're making too much money. There are trillions of dollars in the economy that go into a large percentage of that goes into the pockets of the politicians.
Right.
People
One
need
way or
to
another.
get, people need to get little devices that do on a small scale in some little arena
Yeah.
of their life what could be happening.
This
on a
was
big
my
scale.
original thought, is simply to make some toys
Yes,
and even market them with a lie, put in wooden batteries and no, I'm serious. Put in something like a dead battery, There's another guy named Joe Newman, who ran this huge motor. We're talking a ton, big motor with dead batteries. No lie. It runs on dead batteries, and what's worse is it charges the batteries, which are not rechargeable. After he runs it for like 18 minutes, the batteries are fully charged. And it makes so much electricity he has to use it, otherwise it blows up.
Oh, well, that would be
Okay.
another YouTube vehicle.
Wow, this is on YouTube, while it runs. And if he unplugs it, it runs for another 18 minutes, which is impossible. No motor will run at all once you unplug it. His does. Okay?
This is on YouTube, I gotta buy
And he doesn't know it because he was a weightlifter. So he explained this by the way a gyroscope works, which of course scientists laughed at him. Of course, he demonstrated that he could predict astral phenomena based on his theories because gyroscopes, atoms, magnetism, all work on the same principle. He just doesn't know what that is because he's not an ether scientist. So, including astral phenomenal, right? That ties them all together, but nothing else does.
What's his name?
Joe Newman.
So the
Joe
reason
Newman and Big Bertha. He makes a capacitive inductor, but his capacitance is driven by the limitation of the speed of light. Okay? His coil is 7 miles long. So he launches just voltage, no current, from the dead batteries. Dead batteries have voltage, they have no current, that's why they're dead. Right? He launches dead voltage, or only voltage, into this wire. It takes milliseconds for it to come back. His motor commutates and it opens the circuit before it can do that. So it becomes a capacitor. But it's also an inductor because it does force the magnet that's at the core of it. His motor design is one of the earliest motor designs that were made, and they're totally inefficient. But his is over unity, and he cannot get a patent. And the patent office actually rewired it on their own, plugged it in, blew it up, and said it doesn't work, and refused to give him a patent. And they billed him over $100,000 for their time and effort to do that.
Oh, of course.
He had to sue them and go to Congress to get the charges dropped, but he did not get a patent.
He's got the power. Okay, well, let's,
Well, that's
So,
so
it's up to you.
in another country.
It's up to you.
Wow.
It's impractical.
So
But the
enlightening.
principle, if it was understood, is what Nancy Hines is doing with his.
Are we gonna do this
And
symbol
that is
here or
Yeah, let's
outside?
do it here, we're running late.
So that was fun.
Hines? I want
This is-
AC.